The Remains of the Day. Kazuo Ishiguro, born in 1954. Kazuo Ishiguro was born in Nagasaki in 1954. As his family shifted to Britain in 1960, he had his education in Kent and in East Anglia. His two novels won Winifred Holtby Prize, and the third one, The Remains of the Day, won Booker Prize in 1989 and was filmed, acted by Anthony Hopkins and Emma Thompson, and won many awards. Ishiguro, as a writer, more interested in what people tell themselves happened rather than what actually happened. Similarly, The Remains of the Day is characterized by nostalgia, as Stevens, the hero of the novel, looks back to what he regards as England's golden age. He recollects his memories in fragments that happened in between First and Second World Wars. Apart from this emotional restraint, a traditional trait that is said to be one of the characteristics of English, has a big role to play in this novel. James Stevens is a butler at Darlington Hall, which was earlier owned by Lord Darlington and now by John Faraday, an American. Stevens entered Darlington in 1920s. Then Lord Darlington used to continue his status as a hereditary English nobleman as his ancestors. But in 1956, his new employer, Faraday, who is less formal than Darlington was and who cares the well-being of his employees, asks Stevens to take the car and go for a trip, which Stevens has never done before. There, he decides to visit Miss Kenton, the ex housekeeper of Darlington Hall. Recently, Stevens has got a letter from Miss Kenton with her nostalgic expressions. Mr. Faraday has asked Stevens to hire new staffs too. So, he believes that his visit of Miss Kenton will make her return to work in Darlington Hall. But Miss Kenton was not blindly loyal to Lord Darlington as Stevens. She never supported Lord Darlington's act of anti Semitism. That was why, when two Jewish housemaids were dismissed by him, she became extremely upset. Actually, she tried to convey her romantic feelings towards him, but his professional facade didn't allow him to accept it. It even didn't allow him to be a loving son to his father, who had worked for some time in Darlington Hall as an under butler. When his father died, he cried without seeming to realize that she was doing so. To that extent, his professional life influenced his personal life. He embraced wholeheartedly his role of butler as his true, authentic self. Mr. Faraday makes Stevens to take a trip to see his own country's beautiful landscapes. This physical journey through the English countryside, equivalent to the emotional journey he takes as he reminisces. Mr. Faraday attempts to banter with Stevens, but to Stevens, bantering is something new and uncomfortable in between an employee and an employer. But it is a shift from the old world to the new world. However, Stevens, during his trip, observes people bantering on the pier at Weymouth in the evening. As it can create warmth between people, he resolves to become better at banter at the end. Moreover, his personal history was interwoven with his employer Darlington's pro Nazi politics and actions. Though he was proud to work for Darlington, later he regrets for his blind loyalty to Lord Darlington. However, Stevens acknowledges that he was not in a position then to question his employer's views. After the Second World War, the social order changed. Many wealthy landowners in England, like Lord Darlington, were forced to sell estates. Actually, apart from Mr. Faraday, Mr. Smith, whom Stevens meets on his travels, makes him to be aware of the social change. In Dorset, when Stevens needs his car's radiator to be checked, a valley helped him. During the conversation, when Stevens is asked whether he has worked for Lord Darlington, Stevens evades the question and says that he is working for Mr. Faraday. On his stay in Salisbury, in a guest house, he visits the cathedral that was recommended in the book The Wonders of England that he has read earlier. Then he visits Taunton and Little Compton in Cornwall. On his way, he thinks about lesser butlers who will abandon their professions on provocation. But the great butlers like him will never be affected by external events, however surprising, alarming, or vexing. On his meeting Miss Kenton at Clevedon, they share their memories of Darlington Hall. Stevens asks whether she is happy in her married life. She says that though she had not been happy earlier, then she is. Moreover, she wonders what her life would have been with Stevens if she had married him. It would have been better, she means. These words break Stevens' heart. Moreover, Stevens realizes that on her marrying Mr. Ben, Miss Kenton becomes attached to the institution of marriage rather than the domestic system where she once worked. Here, he recollects the words of a retired butler on his way who has advised him not to spend so much time thinking about the past. but to look forward and enjoy himself. Even Miss Kenton says it is of no use to dwell on what might have been. So he decides to sharpen his little used skills at bantering and become a loyal butler to Mr. Faraday. Thus, through this novel, Ishiguro helps us to see how people come to terms with the inevitabilities when they happen to face truth about themselves. Moreover, through the old butler, Ishiguro makes the reader think about his country, its politics, its history, and its culture. That actually makes this novel a different one.